Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter. And this is the show where we go over a little bit about yesterday's slate, yesterday's kind of crap show of a slate. With the rain delay, postponement, and one pitcher getting blown up that I had too much of. We'll talk about that. Look through results DB. Take kind of a first look at a 15-game slate for MLB tonight with 2 doubleheader games thrown in there, I believe. And as always, answer your DFS strategy questions. It is the DFS pregame show, so it doesn't have to just be about MLB. Whatever you want, you type it into the YouTube chat. I see you guys in there. Suki Singh, Pug Daddy, Raiders 0414, Matt Mears, Doug Montgomery, Card Fan, Anthony Golding, Joe Mack, Daniel Hutchins, Shane Newman, Jerome Lewis, Eric Hilpold, Sterling Woods, Brian C. Hit the thummy thumbs. Give me some of those thummy thumbs up, down. It doesn't matter. Sideways, press around, click around your mouse. It doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live in the morning. So everyone still giving me congrats on my MMA win. If you want to play MMA DFS, there's a video on the RotoGrinders YouTube channel just posted yesterday. It's the how I won $117,000 in playing MMA DFS. It goes through my entire process of exactly how I play MMA. So if you want to play MMA just like me, go check out that video. Feel free to get more people in the lobby. If you want to play MMA, we got stuff here. We got content at RotoGrinders for premium members. So sign up for Combo Premium. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Matt Mears says my lucky streak is continuing. Took down the $44 power alley last night. Yeah, and I also saw like last week you won the 121 single entry on DraftKings. So Matt Mears is on a heater. He's on a heater. I also saw Raiders 0414 said yesterday's slate was weird. The Yankees weren't nearly as owned as RG said they were. The ownership was hard to predict with the Cubs Brewers game. Right? Because the Brewers should have been chalk, right? The Brewers should have been the most owned team on the slate. They had the highest projection versus their price, facing Alec Mills, whose strikeout rate came down in Wrigley, where the wind was blowing out at 10 to 15 miles an hour. The question were they going to play the game? Right? That's what it came down to. Were they going to play the game? And we saw about 15, 20 minutes before that game locked that they were going to start in a rain delay. So I don't know if they're going to get the game in. So it just came to a matter of what your risk tolerance is on whether or not the game plays, which means once that delay gets announced, ownership starts coming off of them. But where does it go? That's the question. Like we don't know. Most probably either the Reds, the White Sox, or the Yankees. Now it turns out that most of it went to the White Sox and the Reds, which makes sense. So those 3 teams were the other 3. I mean, it's a 5-game slate, which if you didn't play the Wrigley game, turned into a 4-game slate. And if you already had the first game, the Reds game was already locked. So even if you were switching off from there, who do you have to choose from? White Sox, right? White Sox, the Yankees, Padres as the favored teams. Obviously, you could have played the Twins, you could play the Marlins, right? You could have done that. So it's just gauging where that ownership is going to go, because also Peralta's ownership goes down with it, a 10.5K pitcher. So now Tyon gets more ownership, right? Now Giolito and Musgrove, their ownership starts going up. People jumping off of Peralta, right? And I think the main reason why the Yankees came in less owned than projected was due to when their lineup was announced. Unless you were going to play Velasquez or Tyler Wade or Higgs at catcher, like most of the best hitters in the Yankees lineups are first base with Voit and outfielders, Stanton, Judge, and Gallo. Now, you already had Castellanos as like a value. Eloy and Luis Robert, like some of the White Sox, some of the Reds were values enough that, in order to play, a Giolito Musgrove lineup, that type of lineup, like you have to find salary relief somewhere. You're most likely going to be doing it in the outfield spot. So I think just due to the fact that, Wade and Velasquez and the guys at the bottom of the Yankees order are not as, don't project as well or not as enticing. Like it severely limits the stacking ability that you could do for the Yankees, right? You could play Higashioka at catcher. You could play Voit at first. You could play LeMahieu, who tends to be always overpriced at second base. And then you have Velasquez, who's second and shortstop eligible. Wade, I think Wade was third base eligible. I don't know. Is he third base? Did they not even have a third base? Yeah, he was third base eligible. But most people are going to try to jam in Stanton, Gallo, Judge, those types of people into their lineup. So you need middle infielders, and the middle infielders for the other teams were much more appealing. Farmer and India for the Reds in the middle infield. Then you had with the White Sox, you had Tim Anderson, who was priced up. Even I guess Lurie Garcia, is he second base eligible? He had like Cronenworth. I mean, his ownership went up to 24%. You had to find people to fill those spots, right? You look, Eugenio Suarez at third base, 21% owned. If you were getting off of the Wrigley game, you only had 4 games to choose from, and 4 favorites of those 4 games to choose from. So that's where you're going, right? Moncada comes up. So that's why we see here the White Sox and the Reds, right? Because people had the Reds to begin with, right? And that game locked. So once the Wrigley game gets started in a delay, you have to decide what's the chance. We can see here with the Narvaez ownership, like Royal Pain 21, Rinpack, Broranosaurus Flex, like 0%. Like seems like these players, it was split. It wasn't some sharp players just X'd out that game, and some sharp players just I'm gonna build lineups. I'm gonna take a shot. So we see here a nice mix of that. It was up to you what your risk tolerance was. I played 8 lineups last night. I played 2 lineups with the Brewers and 1 lineup with the Cubs in it as a stack, but I didn't play any of them as a one-off or anything, right? I played Peralta in 1 lineup also. I had Castillo in 4 lineups, and that didn't go well. I'm surprised. I only lost 36% last night. It was amazing. I should have lost it all, I guess. I had enough White Sox because I was playing more White Sox than I mean, the White Sox ended up coming in as like really the chalk, but I ended up playing in 3 lineups, and I had, Tim Anderson and Eloy Jimenez in those lineups, and Musgrove and Giolito. So I was able to, cash in like half my lineups. So that worked out because my Castillo lineups had like Milwaukee in it. So it's like the lineup was already dead, and now it's just deader, right? I think the Peralta lineup had Milwaukee. Like I tried to keep them all together, right? So if the lineup's going to die, it's going to go way down. It's just going to be dead. I mean, that's what you could do in lineup HQ here on RotoGrinders. The only in stacks button is your friend. So if I was making 100 lineups yesterday, which I wasn't, typically on the short slate side, I typically don't want to put that much volume down. So I'll play the smaller field stuff, the $88, mid stakes, the 121 single entry, the 250, whatever the hell it is on DraftKings. But if I was making 100 lineups, I would, that whole game, Milwaukee, Chicago, I would have just had the OIS button on all the hitters, and just like they're in stacks. And if that game gets postponed, it's not, I don't have zeros mixed into, 80 out of my 100 lineups, right? It's I could play forward. I could play 20 lineups of this game, and then and then just throw them out. If all of them thrown out all at once. That's what most sharp players do. I mean, but we could see here that plenty tried to play the game. Take a look at like Eduardo Escobar. I mean, it's not heavily. I mean, but look at the ownerships of these the Brewers. Narvaez 16, a catcher because catcher was weak. Right, we go down here. Rowdy Tellez 11, Escobar 11, Yelich 10, Wong 10. And it's a 5-game slate. Garcia 9, Adames 9. If there was no question that game was going to play, these ownership numbers would have been double, if not more than double. Yelich would have been 22. Adames would have been 20. Escobar would have been 18. Tellez would have been 24. So I viewed it as an opportunity. If people are going to jump off, I'm going to get the highest ceiling projected team, at least in the bat, for twice as less ownership than they should be. But but then you have to weigh in the fact that it's a 50-50 chance that the game even plays. So hopefully it does. And then in those lineups, like I didn't mind playing Musgrove. Like the main key on this slate was the chalk. Like Musgrove was going to be the chalk as pitcher, and obviously the chalk it succeeded yesterday. Musgrove plus Giolito. I played a bunch of Carlos Hernandez against the Yankees. Because in my White Sox lineups, I would play Hernandez. So fading, I want the Yankees to do poorly in those types of lineups. I played Castillo because I didn't think people were going to go up to him. And then Castillo made more sense than Peralta because, like, if the game would have played, I think Peralta would have been more owned than Castillo. And with the Castillo locking early, I'm like, I'll just lock in a 21% owned pitcher. And yeah, that didn't work out. -11. For Rhinosaurus Flex, 42%. Neil Orfield, 30%. RBX at 2, right? Royal Pain at 0. But they were going very heavy on the Musgrove Giolito pitching combination, which worked out. Then we have Neil Orfield went way under on Musgrove. That's more of what I did. So played Peralta, played Castillo, right? Didn't work out. Where did Hernandez come in? Carlos Hernandez. Where is he? Right. Right. We have some sharp players over on Carlos Hernandez. So he's playing a lot of those types of lineups. Castillo plus Hernandez plus the Brewers. Right. Well, it turns out that with the Brewers ownership going down, then I don't mind playing Musgrove in those lineups anymore. Did I change it? I don't think I changed any of them. That would have been a consideration. I did play a Marlins lineup. I did play Lewis Brinson, who had a home run, but it didn't matter in that lineup. I think I played a Brewers Marlins lineup, so his home run didn't matter. His home run didn't even matter for first place, right? He was a 2K guy. My first place was a 4-2-1-1. Which for a 4-game slate, which it turned into a 4-game slate, is perfectly fine. So it's Cleveland 4, White Sox 2, Cronenworth, and Wilson Ramos, and DJ LeMay with Giolito and Musgrove. Because remember, on the smaller slates, you don't have 5-3. You don't have to correlate to that extent. Because it's less likely that, one team puts up 1 billion points or something, and you need 4 or 5 of them. So here with the second place lineup. Well, it's the same score, but a different line. Kind of weird, right? It looks like a 3v3 or a 4v4. What is this? Stevenson, India, Straw. Right. Instead of Robert, Ramos, and Cronenworth. That's what it looks like. A 3v3. Same exact score, 223.1. You really need you needed Jose Ramirez, you needed Eloy Jimenez, and you needed Giolito and Musgrove. And I think you didn't need Ramos, even though he was I think the only catcher that hit a home run, but that got enough points. Did you need Bradley Zimmer at 2K? Now you could have had Lewis Brinson instead of Bradley Zimmer. problem is none of the other Marlins really did anything worth a crap. Yeah, Ahmed Rosario at shortstop. Yeah, 25 points. Yeah, you need him. Let's see. Yeah, you needed the. You kind of needed the Indians yesterday because they were cheap and they put up what, 9 runs. So there you go. Adam Pantano, have you thought about applying your MMA strategy to tennis slate, since it's a similar concept of picking 6 players, no captains, and you could use breaks and aces compared to finishing early? Yeah, no, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. The model, if you want to call it a model, that I showed yesterday and on that video. So it's on the RotoGrinders YouTube channel. You could watch it. It's a 55-minute video. It's all there. That type of mentality where you're not even concerned about projecting like a range of outcomes of like an actual like DFS score. Right? I'm not like doing MMA. I'm like, his median is 65. Sometimes he scores 110. Sometimes he scores 17, and figuring out like the distribution of that. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going straightly by the betting lines on the most correlative metrics. But that's the problem with tennis. It's like, do you have to pick so basically winners, breaks, and aces? You would have to. What you would have to do is back test it. You'd have to look at the betting lines, and I don't know the tennis betting lines. Okay, so I may be speaking out of who knows what the betting lines are in comparison to the DraftKings score. So what you want to do is you want to take the players, all the tennis players, get the lines for all of for those things, breaks, aces, whatever, and the wins and whatever it is, whatever you can bet on in tennis. And then go by those probabilities and then compare them to the actuals. So you want to go back as far as tennis has been on DraftKings, so a year or so, a little over a year, something like that. You get all that data and then you plot it. Well, this guy was, just like an MMA. This guy was a 58% chance of finishing inside the distance. What was his score? Right. This was his score, and you go through the whole thing. So the ones that have the higher ones, do they have the higher? What you want to correlate it to in MMA, 90 plus or 100 plus scoring. So you don't even care about the actual. You just like, did it get at least 90 points? You don't care if it was 67 or 52 or 84, just 90 plus, and that's it. So whatever that is for tennis, you could do the same thing, because you need to know what the correlation of those betting lines are to those types of scores, so you know how much to weight them. Because like I said yesterday with MMA, it's like, yeah, round 1 finishing is insanely highly correlative, because you get 90 points for a first round finish, right? So most likely your fighter, it's going to be in the top line. Inside the distance, not as much, but still extremely high. And then the win is not that much. So you want to know that ratio, at least estimated, right? There's some type of thing. So maybe in tennis there isn't a betting line that has that high of an R. Like the round 1 finishing for a 90 plus point score is a 1, right? It's like perfect, right? For a 100 plus point score, it's like 0.9 something, 0.92, 0.94, which is, ridiculously high. Like you won't find that. You don't see that in most DFS sports of a metric that has a 0.9 plus correlation coefficient. Inside the distance is like 0.65 or something, which is still really, really high for the grand scheme of things. And then the win is like 0.2, right? Because, people win all the time and don't score 100 points. So you need to know that for tennis. And maybe there isn't ones that have that high of an R, and then you can't utilize that much. But if it is that correlative, then you could make a little Excel spreadsheet. You could do the same exact thing and do it for tennis. It's much easier. It's much more straightforward in individualized type sports like MMA or golf or tennis, where there's no correlation between one tennis player to another tennis player in another match. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just 6 people, right? And it's very binary, especially in tennis. One person wins and one person loses, and that's it. Golf, it's not as binary, but it's still, you could look at top 5 odds. You could look at top 10 odds. You don't have to even look at like what type of golfer they are. You could do it in PGA. The problem in PGA is that, like, that's what most models do, right? So it's like, you're not going to find really inefficient ownership. Typically the high owned golfers are the ones that have higher top 5, top 10, top 20, or win betting lines than their price, than their ownership. I mean, like, and they end up being owned. So you look and you go, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna divide it by the ownership and see where the leverage is, and you're gonna find that, yeah, the best plays are overowned, but there's a lot of plays aren't underowned. A lot of you still guys that have a 0.5% chance of getting in the top 5. They're like 0.5% owned. I mean, like, they're not zero owned. I mean, so you see, it's much more efficient in PGA. That's what I tried doing for PGA. I mean, that's how I played PGA, but finding inefficient golfers at their ownership. Yeah, I can find over-owned people. It's hard to find under-owned. Right, the guy that's 26% owned should really only be 19% owned, and still should be high owned. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to play that guy. And then who do I play? Most of the players that have a shot at winning are actually all over. And then you have 20, 30 golfers at the bottom that almost have no shot at winning at all. They're under-owned, but what am I going to play? 4.1% owned golfers in my lineup. One of these guys may get in the top 20, but they're not winning. Let's see. Samuel Shannon, any idea why Chipotle Attic and Papa Gates aren't playing MLB? I have no idea. Good for us. They're not playing DFS, because I saw Papa Gates in MMA. That's good for us. Who cares? They got other stuff going on. That's fun. That's fine with me. They've had a very bad when they started playing. They've had a very bad MLB season. They played the first 3, but I saw their lineups the first 3 months. Not many times towards the top. I mean, we've been doing the show. I typically put up results DB, and I look at results DB every day. I mean, this is what I do in the morning, right? You're watching what I do. But yeah, they must have been a big downswing in MLB, and I think in NBA. I don't even remember it, because I didn't play like the last month and a half of NBA, but still, like, coming out of February, March, I didn't really see much out of either of them. Maybe a downswing. Maybe they're going on vacation. Who knows? They're not. They're still playing DFS, just not MLB. Chris Galligan, or am I going to buy any DraftKings NFTs? No. I own no non-fungible tokens and no Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. So no, I don't own any Ethereum or Bitcoin or Dogecoin, or you name. I don't have any penguin avatars or apes or any of that. I got none of it. So you know what I got? You know what I got with my money? You know what that the $117,000 is going into? It's going to my stock portfolio. Right? Just give that to my, I fill up my IRA, right? So that I can only do $6,000 a year on that, right? And then the rest goes in, I have 80% of my money in the taxable trading account. And you know what I do? I don't trade that much. I put it in and I go, give me the S&P 500, right? Give me the S&P, right? I got some DraftKings stock, right? I got some riskier investments, but that's what I do. I don't bet NFT. I'm not buying gifts and JPGs that you don't even own the gift. You sort of own it. You don't. Whatever. I understand exactly what it is. I think it's stupid. Not stupid from like, oh, I don't understand the technology. I understand the technology completely. I just think it's Absurdly stupid investment. And my thing is, see in 20 years. 20 years, we'll be looking at that going, I can't believe people lost $1 billion doing that, right? In 20 years. I'm perfectly fine with a 7% annualized return. That's perfectly fine. I don't need all the money. I could take all this money, put it into somewhere and get 7% return, give it to me. That's fine. Done. And it compounds, right? Year over year over year. And then my IRA, 59.5, I could start taking it out, right? Great. What's wrong with that? I play the long game. Kevin TG. If you're building 100 to 150 lineups in a large field GPP for MLB, is it okay if the last lineup in the build is 20 to 30 points off the top build, or the lineups basically have no shot? They have less of a shot. The problem with the optimizers, and they all work this way, is that the more constraints that you give it, it's going to try to adhere to all of your constraints. So if you only want 10% of this guy and 20% of that guy and this thing, it's going to try to do all of that in 100 and 150 lineups. But that may, like the last couple of lineups in your build may be really poorly projected because it's trying to fit it like, oh, you want 5% of this guy that doesn't project well. I'm going to try to give 5% of him to you. I'm going to try to do these stacks in exactly these ways that you want. And in order to fit all of these variables up here, sometimes it ends up with, 2-3 lineups at the bottom that are just like, well, that's I throw a bunch of stuff together and that's what's there. Now, I don't mind, especially for efficiency standpoint, that I end up with those. I call it the cost of doing business. So if I'm playing 150 lineups, I think tonight I'm playing 120, right? 100 in the main, $11 whatever on DraftKings, and 20 in the 20 max. And I build all uniques, right? So 120. So depending on my time that I have, and when the lineups come out, there may be rain issues, who knows? It may be that the last 10 lineups in my build may just not really be that very good lineups. They may be minus EV lineups. But in order to get 110 lineups that are really plus EV, I may have to sacrifice and just have 10 that on the bottom that aren't very good, right? Because it's trying to do all of this stuff and then kind of giving me the rest at the bottom. Now, if I have the time, I will start pruning them, right? I will look into, why am I getting, 3 of these lineups on the bottom project poorly? Because it's jamming in the stack that doesn't project well, but it's not giving me like the chalk with it, right? Because I've already used up all my percentage, my exposure of the chalkier players. So I try to fix that, right? And then run it again. Or sometimes if I'm playing 120 lineups, I'll build 150 lineups. I'll build 30 more than what I need, knowing that the bottom 10 or so are probably not going to be all that great. So then I could start pruning them. And that's another way to do it. Or you can build your own optimizer and try to fix it yourself. But all optimizers, not only lineup HQ in the industry, have some amount of clumping issues. One way to help out in lineup HQ is to do it with running exposure percentages, right? Because like yesterday, it's like, oh, I only want 50% Musgrove. And you could say, okay, that's what I want. But it's going to want Musgrove in like all the first line. Like it's the highest projected pitcher by far. So if you're building 100 lineups, it's going to, the first like 50 are going to be Musgrove lineups. And then the next 50 aren't going to be Musgrove lineups. So it's going to clump like that. If you use running exposure percentages, that means the optimizer is going to take into account, you want 50% of Musgrove, right? So after the first lineup gets generated, you now have 100% Musgrove. So it goes, well, it should only be 50%. So in your next lineup, it will be a non-Musgrove lineup. And then after the second lineup, how much Musgrove do you have? You have 50%. You have one with him and one without him. So the next lineup is going to be a Musgrove lineup. And then now the fourth lineup gets generated. It's going to go, how much Musgrove do you have? Well, you have him in 2 out of 3 lineups. That's 66.7%. Well, based on the maximum exposure that you put in is 50. So it's going to go, okay, I need to give you a non-Musgrove lineup next, right? So that's what running exposure percentages do. So if you want to try to smooth out those clumps, this is what I would use. Try to use this more. But the more and more you constrain it, sometimes you get an error with this, or sometimes it doesn't build enough lineups. Like when you get really squeezed down, when you give it like no slack, right? I want 5 unique players. I only want 2% of this guy. Like, you're really narrow. You're playing 14 stacks at 2%. I mean, like it's hard to do that, right? It gets to a point and just goes, I don't know. So you try to make 150 and it quits after 70. But that's primarily because you're putting way too many constraints on it. You have to give it a little bit more leeway. Instead of 14 stacks with 2%, do 14 stacks with 4%, knowing that some you'll get 4 and some you'll get 1, right? Like, it's just giving it a little bit more leeway. Or the minimum salary, like, it needs to spend exactly 50K. Like, dude, you're limiting it way too much. How about 49.7? Is that good enough for you? Right? Or you look at your pitching exposure, knowing that, I'm playing 4 pitchers at 50% each. It's like, well, there's no leeway anymore. Right? You have to play 2 pitchers. So you're saying that up until the exact maximum, like, you have to give it some leeway. So if you have 4 pitchers, instead of 4 pitchers, that's 50%. Say you put the max exposure at 60%. So at least it allows it to go up to 60, and some pitchers may be 60 and some pitchers may be 40 out of the 4. But you give it leeway to have the salary and fit everything else in. But once you constrain it so hard, like, that's when I tried to build 150 lineups and it only gave me 112. And then you go to support and you don't realize that that's as many as it can be with your constraints. Like, mathematically, that's what it should be doing, right? Going in the YouTube chat. Let's see. Brett Narlock, do you target an aggregate amount of projected ownership? Well, it depends on the slate. Depends on what the optimal lineup is. You could go to past pregame shows. I've showed that numerous, probably double digits amounts of time. Brandy Barrington, headed to my first live final. Ooh. Any tips or strategy used versus all these top players? You're not going to like it. You're not going to like my strategy. You're not going to like it, Brandy. Take risks. Okay, that's what I would say. Especially if you want to take it off of one qualifier and you're not very invested, that's what I would suggest. But that's how I play small field GPPs. I mean, play it like you would play a small field GPP. Just understand that in a live final, typically there's 100 entries, 200 entries, something like that. A lot of the top players spend a lot of money to qualify for them. A lot of money, right? Sometimes someone could come in third, fourth place and lose money on all the money they've spent to qualify. Okay. So depending on how much some of these players, now, a lot of the top players aren't even affected by it. It's part of their bankroll. But just like most small field GPPs, people play too safe. People play too safe. So the chalk is going to be chalky. And the under-owned players are going to be even more under-owned. So what I would suggest, you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to come in last place. But especially, you're not going to beat the top players just based on projection. Like, that's not going to, they have better projections than you, right? Even if you're doing it, they're going to get the best plays. They're going to find the best route for, who's undervalued, right? What's the top median lineup type of thing. And they'll stack or whatever if it's MLB. What you should be doing is exploiting that. So if there's going to be if it's going to be a large slate, does it mean you stack against a chalky pitcher? No, you don't have to get that nuts. But typically the live final, they play on bigger slates, right? 12 plus games, something. They're not going to have a 4-game slate for a live final. So my tip is to go off the board. Oh, everyone's going to probably be playing. The chalk is going to be one of these 3 teams. and this pitcher. I'll play the fourth team and a different pitcher. Play against that. Don't play what everyone else is playing. But obviously, you have to embrace the fact that if the chalk hits, you lose. That's it. You lost. Typically in the live fighting, you still get money, right? Typically, last place still plays like 5,000 or whatever the hell it is. But that's what I would do. And also understand that the more of a skill gap that you have with your opponents, the more you should be embracing variance. Okay. So, for instance, let's give an example of a contest where you'd be completely outmatched. Let's say it's me versus LeBron James in a game of one-on-one basketball. Okay, it's me versus LeBron James. What I should be doing, if LeBron is going to allow me to shoot 3-pointers, which I'm horrible at, right? I don't play basketball well. I should be doing that. It's high vet, right? Most likely, I'm going to be shooting 3-pointers and missing, and then LeBron's going to get it back and just jam it in the hoop, right? And do that over and over and over and over again. But should my strategy be to try to drive the lane against LeBron? No, that's never going to work. I'm 5'10", right? Do you think I'm gonna be able to lay the ball, barely dribble and go? No, that's what he'll do, right? He doesn't have to rely on 3-point. Right, his 3-point percentage is 40%. Him driving the lane is a much higher percentage, and it's going to be much more successful. So, because he has the skill advantage, he shouldn't be doing the high variance things. Taking a 3-point shot from 22 feet out, and then possibly not being able to get the rebound because maybe it hits the rim somewhere, and now I get possession. So LeBron, he shouldn't be taking 3-pointers. I should be. He's like, well, you're horrible at taking 3-point. Yeah, but what other shot do I have to win this? I'm so low to win this to begin with. Right? Imagine if you're playing. It's the same scenario, but it's a game till 11. Right? You're playing a game to 21 or something with 2s and 3s. I get the ball first, and LeBron is spotting me 19 points, which means if I get a 2-pointer, like I win. I probably still should be taking a 3-pointer if LeBron is not going to guard me, right? If I know that any 2-point, any shot inside the arc, I'm gonna get defended by a guy that's more than a foot taller than me. Obviously, he's a professional basketball player. But once I go behind the arc, I get an absolutely clear shot. Even though my 3-point shooting probably is 8%. Maybe not even that. So what should I do? Well, if I try to make a 2-pointer, I try to drive the lane for a higher percentage, maybe I can make layups at a 90+% rate. Yeah, sure. Okay. But once LeBron gets the ball back, am I ever getting it back? Right? Because remember, it's if you get a basket, you get the ball back, right? That type of game. So what should I do if I have the ball first? I should take a 3-pointer. The likelihood of me getting it in, let's say I have an 8% 3-point shooting rate. In this game, if I make it, I win. So I have an 8% shot of winning the match. 92% shot, LeBron gets the ball back and I never see it again. But is it better than trying to like if I try to take a 2-pointer like that, I may have no success. Right? So I'd rather go the high variance route. So this whole thing shows that when you have the skill disadvantage, you want smaller sample sizes, you want smaller stuff that relies more on luck. Right? If you're a bad college football team, right? You want as few plays in the game as possible. If you're the good college football team, you want to slow the game down. Right? You want as many plays for your opponent to make a mistake as possible. Keep the ball as much as possible. So that applies to DFS too. So if you're playing a contest where the skill gap between, you believe at least, the skill gap between you and your opponents are that high, you want to rely on luck. You don't want to rely on having to do a 2v2, right, between all these teams. No, you want to pick some nutso lineup and hope to get lucky. That's a better shot at you trying to get a 2v2 on 50 other players. Your lineups all look the same other than a 2v. Like, why? Over the long run, you're not going to beat those guys out. Let's see. Going through. Let's see. Michael Dompier. Milwaukee is projecting better than normal for a 7-inning game this evening. I normally would just X them out on a 15-game slate. What are your thoughts since they project fine? I would pretty much X them out also. If they beat me, they beat me. I would never play it as a stack. Never. Maybe a one-off. Fine. Is there someone that's a one-off that could get a home run or something? But once you're reducing the amount of, you're reducing the ceiling. They may project, some of the batters may project decently because they're cheap from a median perspective, but you're dramatically decreasing the ceiling when you remove a plate appearance. Like, you're guaranteed, unless it goes into extras or something, to, especially the home team. Right, Milwaukee's not the home team, but if it was the home team, they only have 6 innings worth of plate appearances. But it's a 15-game slate. You have 14 other games to choose from, 13 other games to choose from. Yes, you have to weigh that against your ownership. That absolutely. It still applies. They're going to be 0.1% owned. Maybe it can be. Maybe it can be plus EV. Maybe you can do it. You better hope that no other team on the slate puts up a lot of points. I mean, because some of these guys may get max 3 at bats, max. Yeah, most of the time when you're stacking, you're looking for 5, 6, 7 at bat. I mean, the team scores 12, 14 runs, which I guess could happen in 7 innings, I guess. I just think, as a general rule, if you always X out those games, I don't think you're giving up anything. On a slate that size, if this was a 4-game slate, that's a different story. On a 15-game slate, I don't think you're missing out. I think if your default was to X them out, you're fine. Yet in certain situations, maybe some of these stacks, maybe 3-mans, maybe one-offs could be plus EV in certain lineups. And you can find them. If you want to take the time to find them for today's slate, go right ahead. But it's going to take you time. You're going to have to figure that out. So do you want to spend that time doing that? Or spend the time not doing that and doing something more important, X them out, and just say, hey, the Brewers score 14 runs today, and a couple of people have them, and I lose, then so be it. But if I just X'd out the 7-inning games every time, I'm still profitable. So, like, what does it matter? So you have to think of that. It's not a matter of can it have. Yes, of course. You can play Milwaukee line. You can play lineups that have a Milwaukee player in it, depending on the lineup that it's in. But do you want to deal with that? No, I don't. I have better things to do. There's other teams on the slate. Am I willing to put in the 11? Am I willing to invest $11 in that lineup, or $11 in another lineup that I know is plus EV? Right, rather than rely on a ceiling of them getting 5 at bats in 7 innings and hitting 3 home runs or something. No, I'm not losing money by not playing it. Adrian Garcia, could you explain how you got your rating in your MMA model? It's a weight of the win odds, the first round odds, the inside the distance odds, and the projection, the median projection versus the ownership. Now, what weights are they? That depends on the slate. So those weights will change depending on the size of the slate, the makeup of the slate. And what those weights are for the makeup of the slate, there's a reason why I didn't mention and I didn't show you that formula. Because then you'd be able to make the exact model that I have. So you could make a model very close. You could make, if you watch that video, it's not advanced anything. I'm literally just taking the odds and dividing it by the ownership to get those leverage scores and getting the median projection, like from RG, from something like that. So you can get all of that information. You can make those all of the numbers in that spreadsheet. You can make easily yourself, other than the rating. And the formula for the rating It's not complicated either. It's a weight of all those figures. You're multiplying by something. A multiplier, right? By something. Am I weighting the win? I'm weighting the win 2. I'm weighting the inside the distance 4, round 1 6, right? The projection this, what those weights are to get a rating, and dividing so it looks like it's 1, right? Just so I get something to look at, right? Where the middle is 1. That's what it is. Now, are you going to come close to mine? Probably. But I'm saying if I gave you that exact formula I was using for a slate, you'd build the exact lineups that I have. Right? I don't want that. You can build similar lineups. I guess there's the formula. I mean, I do that for MLB here. I do it for anything. I mean, I'm transparent. This is how you think in terms of DFS with a game theory driven approach. But it doesn't mean that, if I'm going to play Logan Gilbert today, am I going to stack against this guy or whatever? Like, there's so many more. You can do a million different things in baseball. In MMA, you have to worry so much about duplication, right? So if my numbers if my rating for a guy is 1.68, and you put in your weights on what you think the weight should be, and it comes in at 1.74, we're still both going to be over on the guy. We're probably both going to have that fighter in a lot of lineups. But based on those exact numbers, we may not have the same exact line. We'd be less likely to be duplicated. So I don't want to give people, it's like, okay, here, plug this in, run 160 line, set some exposures or something like that. What'll end up happening is that now I have to factor in people are using my exact methodology to duplicate me. Well, then I don't want that. Yes, you're more likely to build lineups that are closer to mine. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is true. That is going to happen. But I don't want to be able to put in 100 lineups and say, someone can just press 100 and build the same with 100 lineups. No, I don't want that. Okay, Samuel Shannon. I'm just answering anything that's in the chat. What does it matter? Where did you grind most of your poker career? Do you still play for side income? Louisville and New York are tough locations for poker players. Well, I played in underground rooms in New York City, but that was 2003 to 2008, right? I don't play poker much anymore. And I played online, but not seriously online. I played online a bunch, right? But mostly live. I played in Atlantic City, played at the Turning Stone in upstate New York. Las Vegas, yeah, I would go with the World Series of Poker, stuff like that. But mostly underground, private games, underground clubs. I ran a game. But New York isn't a tough location at all. The games in New York are great. Not as good as the games in Los Angeles, but they're still good. Let's see. Eric Hillpold, chalk pitchers, large field versus small field, 1 max versus 3 max. Thoughts? What is that supposed to mean? What's the meaning of life? Thoughts? Like what? It depends on the lineup. Let's see. Going through. Let's see what Daniel says. I'm less likely to play a game that's only 7 innings, but I'll still play them some amount in a large GPP. Same principle for a low projected team total in a normal 9-inning game. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, depending on the ownership, you could play anything. Let's see. And yes, a lot of times you could build 2 different builds for if you're going to play the game or you don't play the game. You could do that. I've done that before. I've done that I do that in football for an injury. A lot of times I'm building my lineups the day before, the night before. Like, we'll go into a Sunday where at 11:30 we're going to figure out if this guy's active or not. And I don't want to take the 90 minutes up until lock. I want to have my lineups ready to go before then. So we saw that like last year, like Julio Jones. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And it dramatically affects your lineups. So if I'm building however many lineups I'm playing, 120 lineups, whatever, I make 120 set as if Julio's in. I make 120 set as if Julio's out. Then at 11:30, you go, Julio Jones will play today. Okay, well, now I know. There you go. Those are my lineups. Jason Canales asks, how do you build 2 sets? You just build 2 sets. What's so complicated? Here you go. Here's a set. Like, this is what you do on the screen. Look, I'm going to build a set of whatever. Okay. You build that, right? You know, you finish that. That comes up as build 1. Then you go back to the player pool and you go, well, what happens if this guy is out? And you take that guy out and then you build, and there you go. Build 2. You could even rename, right? The build 1 is with the guy, right? With the guy. And build 2, you can rename to be without the guy, right? There you go. And then you could export either, see whatever one you want. Not complicated. Today, the guy, I guess, is Jay Happ. Best point per dollar pitcher, according to the bat right now. That's always exciting, right? Right? When you have Jay Happ in your lineups against the Pirates, can he do that badly? Either you're playing Happ against the Pirates or you're playing the Pirates against Happ. Probably. Something like that. Let's see. Any other questions? I'm just scrolling through. This is what I do, right? Answer your questions on YouTube. Yeah, everyone's explaining, right? Norm Bothwell's explaining everything. But yeah, I think the problem is, I think what you're seeing with Milwaukee is you look at the ceiling projections, like Milwaukee. Well, that's a 220 game. Like here's Milwaukee. Milwaukee at 805. If Alec Mills is the pitcher, right? Like their ceiling is 88, but it's only a 7-inning game. Unless Cardi hasn't updated it for that. Maybe that could be the case. That could easily be the case that, you know, Cardi has not updated the inning count of that game. I think that's more likely. It's typically the 7-inning games do not project very well. Because look, the Cubs down here are low. They're low, but we're the Brewers. But it's also because I think they're still expecting like 15-mile-an-hour wind blowing out. That type of thing. So like from a ceiling perspective, like 88 is not that bad for a 7-inning game. But that's the problem, is that typically we don't see the 7-inning games, that they're always down here. Right? We always see the Angels, Cubs. It may just be a bug. Right? We may reload this an hour from now, and then Cardi looks at that and goes, yeah, oh yeah, I have to adjust the Brewers for a 7-inning game for that game. And then the Brewers go down to you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But yeah, you're right. It is weird that a team that's playing a 7-inning game projects from a ceiling perspective, like better than like 2/3 of the stacks on the slate. Yeah, it is weird. Joe Clary, on the player pool page of the lineup HQ, how can I search by player name? Oh, you just click the magnifying glass. Here. Boink. Hap. Right, there you go. There used to be like a little search box here or whatever, but we have so much stuff to conserve space. So yeah, whenever you see a magnifying glass as part of a user interface, that means search. So you just go near there, and you can leave it down. You can search for anything you want. Lineup HQ, which you can get with the RotoGrinders premium subscription. Click on the link in the description to get $10 off your first month. Kingsley Gaw, Blender, could you post a downloadable version of your Excel MMM module? Yeah, but you still have to populate it. You could do it. Just do it. If you're not, this is my attitude when I posted that. I even said in the video, this is easy to do. You can make this yourself. There's no complicated nothing. I'm literally taking the betting lines from the sports books themselves. manually putting it in. I'm not scraping it even. I'm literally have a browser open and I'm manually going, okay, plus this, whatever. I'm converting that into a percentage. You could probably find there's a formula for that. There's, what American odds to a percentage is, right? You could even Google what the formula is for that, right? You could even find that if you don't know how to do it mathematically yourself, right? And then I'm taking the ownership number, which is you could find on RG or on any site or whatever. You can make your own number. Who knows? And then you divide the two, and then you go. And those are the for those three things, and then get the projection and divide that. And then you get that number. I mean, this is not complicated. And my attitude is if I'm going to show something that I proprietarily do, which is not complicated. If you're not willing to go and do that yourself in Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, then what the hell? So complicated. You don't even have to have the sheet. Just the concept. The whole thing just applies to the same concept. This fighter is X inside the distance. He's going to be Y owned. Is that higher or low? Oh, he's 32% inside the distance. Only going to be 12% owned. I'm going to play a lot of that guy. This guy is 17% inside the distance. He's going to be 35% owned. I'm going to be less of that guy. I mean, you don't even need you don't need Excel for that. It goes by that same concept. So if you want to make, I mean, you have every right to make it yourself. There are several people that I know that have literally just made that. Took them 10 minutes. But I don't know Excel that well. Then learn it. There's no reason I should have to share that where you're going to still have to put in everything manually yourself anyway. It's not like you could share a link and be like, oh, well, here it is. And it automatically gets in all the information from every. No, you manually do it. If you're going to already have to do it manually that way, you might as well just make it yourself. Was that a bad answer? If you're not willing to do the work, it's not hard work. If this was like an algorithm, if this was like some fancy thing that I spent if this was Cardi's bat projection system that he did 5+ years on, 7 years on with multiple SQL queries, and you're not going to build that from nothing, right? That's why he sells that. Someone asked if they could buy my MMA model. I'll buy it from you. You send me the link or whatever. I have to buy it, dude. You can make it in 10 minutes. What am I supposed to do, Char? That seems like completely predatory. We'll share the link and it'll be $100. Well, number one, I don't want to give you my exact rating because then you'll make the same, the literal same exact lineups as me, or at least more propensity to. The numbers will be exactly the same. And number two, like you could make it in 10 minutes. So do it. But that's the whole thing about that. Like, do I have a model for baseball? No, I use Cardi's model. Football, RG and Cardi. Basketball, RG's basketball projections are great. Can I build a model? Yes, I can. I can build all of these types of models. I can. It just takes me. It'll take me God knows how. I'm not great in Excel. I don't know R. I can probably teach myself Python in about a month. So I do have some web development, kind of scripting and coding experience. But is it worth it to okay? Am I going to build one better than Cardi for baseball? No, I don't think I can. So why not just pay him $300? That's what he's charging. And there, done. And I would say the same thing. If my MMA model was that complicated, and then I'd agree with you. I'd be like, okay, but $50. There you go. Like whatever it is, because then it would be worth it. But when you could do it in 10 minutes, just do it. Right? Just do it. Then it's worth your time. I build an MLB model. It's going to take just to build out just the bare basics is going to probably take me 3 to 4 weeks of full-time work, where I'm working 8 hours a day just to get the basics and then have to do everything. It'd be ridiculous. So then it's worth paying $400 for. If you could do it in 10 minutes, then what the hell are you paying for? Go do it. I showed you. It's not like I didn't show. It's not like I showed the Excel and just say, here are the ratings. I'm not going to tell you how I got there. What's the point of that? There's no concept. There's no game. I'm not teaching you anything. I'm just saying that, oh, if you just had my numbers, you'd win. It's like, no, you could. I'm literally doing what I do in any other sport. Taking a look, and does this player, does this team, does this lineup have a higher probability of success than their ownership? That's it. That's it. That's all. That's what it is in every sport. MMA is just easier to see because there's not much to look at. And the betting lines are so much more obvious. Baseball, you don't. Well, if this guy hits a home run, then that team could win more often than not. The correlation coefficients of those types of bets are low. But you could build a model based on them if you want. But there's just a lot more betting lines to go by. Right, Yao Pete. I literally have built a set spreadsheet in the last 15 minutes. Right, it's not complicated. It's not. It's really not. And you don't need to be an Excel wizard because I'm not. I consider myself an Excel intermediate, right? I can do most things. It's just that I do them very inefficiently, probably, right? Like I built a little simulation thing in Excel once, and like it takes like 20 minutes to do 100 of them. Like that, you can't live like that, right? Like, how do I do it more efficient? I got to learn the other stuff. So it becomes useless. So it's like, I understand how it could get done. It's just, I'm not good at it. But for the MMA one that I showed in that video, dude, you could do that in 10 minutes. It's not, I barely want to call it a model. It's not a model. It's not building a range of outcomes of DFS scores. It's not projecting anything. There's no projection involved whatsoever. It's not trying to project anything. All it is trying to come up with a number to determine how much leverage an entire lineup has. That's the main thing. So based on the odds versus the ownership, what fighters are over-owned or under-owned, and now that allows me to prioritize higher rated fighters in lineups. So I build lineups that have guys that are more over-owned with guys that are under-owned, right? Like Luke in that lineup that I won with. Like he was way over-owned. But in that lineup, he got between Kopp and Got with all the other players, Penne, Kopp, and Gatto were so under-owned that Luke was fine in that lineup. It had enough leverage because the rating, that number for those fighters were higher. So Luke was able to get into those lineups. So that's all that it's doing. It's not projecting anything. Okay. Anthony Golding, you playing any DFL preseason DFS now? No, and I don't. Who's going to play when? I'll wait till week 1 because we'll have 12 games late with all preseason games and quarterbacks playing 1/2 and running backs playing 1/4. It's too much of a headache. Too much of a headache for me. Good luck playing. There is an edge if you want to spend the time on it. There is an edge, but it really comes down to how much is your time worth. I'm going to be in the soccer's back, so I'm going to be playing soccer on Saturdays and Sundays. Still got baseball. MMA is taking a week off. I mean, I still got stuff to play, so I don't need to play NFL preseason. Okay, give me some thumbs on your way out the door. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever. Hit the subscribe button. If you're new here, you like the show, this is what we do. We pretty much didn't talk about today's slate. We talked about the Brewers 7-8 game, but it's all really guided by YouTube, right? By you people. So you get to come here anytime you want, right? In the morning, ask you questions. We review some stuff. We go over some strategy. Sometimes we talk more about the day's slate. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we talk more about yesterday's slate. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we talk about golf or MMA or something else, or who knows, or show you some lineup HQ stuff. It's all really guided by you, because that's what I do here. Mondays through Fridays at 11 o'clock Eastern for the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.